Watch Legal Straight Talk right here on Long Island Public Access, Channel 20.
Rolling and action.
Hi, everybody. Jerry Parisi here from the Filmmaker Show.
Close your mouth, you're catching flies.
Along with Michelle. How are you, honey?
I'm okay.
How is traffic tonight?
Traffic.
What I love about my wife, she's right on point. Well, we're excited because we have one of the most jolliest, friendliest gentlemen who happen to own multi-million-dollar company, who's always happy to tell us what's going on with it, and is Mr. Kyle Kennedy, the CEO of Seafarer Exploration Company. We know him as the Treasure Hunter. Welcome. How are you?
Jerry, thank you. You know what? I'm delighted to be back, and I'm extremely humbled that you would even ask me back. I think that's fantastic.
It's good. It's good to have you back, and it's nice that you could just hop on a plane and come here.
Yeah,
like on our show.
Yeah. Hey, it's a lot cooler here than it is down in Florida. It's
so there's
hot
a
down
method
there.
to your madness.
Yeah, so you came to the winter of New York right now here at the 81 degrees, which I love. So first of all, welcome back to New York. And right from the start, what's going on? Where's the Seafarer Company today, and how's that treasure hunter coming?
There you go. There you go. You know, if you would like, Jerry, I can back into this just a little bit.
Go right ahead,
I don't know if
please.
you got new audience, probably do, and some old audience as well. But
Our audience is growing by the day, and I'm very happy to report 55,000 on Channel 20, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 79 or 80,000 people have watched Madhouse up to this point.
okay, now you just got to make me nervous, okay?
Don't laugh at him. He's okay.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, we've been pushing really hard to get a permit, and our business, as you already know, is to go out and hopefully recover treasure. And in line with doing that, there's a tremendous amount of research that goes into this work. And then after the research is done, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into conservation. So the treasure is only one small piece of it. Very important piece,
Sure.
a piece that everybody likes, but there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into it before we get to that point. And last time that we visited was a year and roughly 3 or 4 months ago. And at that point in time, we were chasing down a permit from the state of Florida that would allow us to dig up a particular area. And in this area is a particular wreck. And we were allowed previously to work next to the wreck, about a quarter mile away, okay? And a quarter mile away doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
No.
Yeah. These wrecks back in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, when they would wreck, they were wooden ships, and they were carrying very heavy loads, payloads coming back from the New World. And during that period of time, they would sail nonstop from Havana, Cuba, all the way to Seville, Spain. And they would sail up the coast of Florida because that's where the Gulf Stream is.
Right.
So as they would sail up the coast, the only thing they didn't have was a weather channel. And so they're sailing along.
All right, put on the Weather Channel before we go.
Yeah, they wish, right. And so sometimes entire fleets would be sunk by the weather, and they would sink off the coast of Florida, which is why today the coast of Florida on the Atlantic side is called the Treasure Coast. Yeah, and people find treasure just walking up and down the beach, because ultimately some treasure will wash in. they might have had a coin purse, or it might have been somebody's personal coins in their pocket, and those coins might have washed in. Typically, the chest that they carried, full of silver coins, gold coins, emeralds, typically those chests set down and stuck, and they didn't typically wash in on the beach that much. So
I guess those would be called a treasure chest, eh?
yes, yes. Yeah, we'd like to get a few of those. And what's happened is just this last week, we received our permit from the state of Florida that allows us to go and actually work the rec area itself.
That's great.
That is
it is.
amazing.
Now,
Michelle,
what
it's
is-
awesome.
What's done on the preparation side of things? Do you have people, like, how do you arrive at it? Do you have people who are doing research? Do you have archaeologists
Yes,
who are working with you?
yes.
Tell us
Yeah,
about that.
we actually have some top-notch archaeologists. One of the archaeologists that handles all of our underwater archaeology is Jim Sinclair. And Jim has been around the world. He's been on projects that I'll never even know. He's been on every major wreck, whether it's the Titanic or the Etosha. He's been on all of them. He's probably found more treasure than probably any person alive. When Mel Fisher found a major find 30-something years ago, Jim Sinclair was their archaeologist and working
Wow.
for them. And so I've seen lots of pictures with him with silver bars, 70-pound silver bars that are lined up and stacked up so far in the background that they just go out of sight in a picture.
Wow.
Silver bars, 70 pounds. It was a massive, massive
What could a
find.
silver bar be worth?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've never done the math.
I know what a
It's-
regular bar would be
yeah,
worth. A few
yeah,
beers.
Right. But just the intrinsic weight of the bar itself being
Yeah,
70
70
pounds, you
pounds.
could break it down by an ounce and ultimately get there. But
Oh my gosh.
in addition to that, because it's actually a piece of treasure, then the value of that bar, which has the king's stamps on it, etc., and markings, the value of that bar is far greater than the silver weight itself. So the value of this stuff is tremendous. But Jim is one of our archaeologists, and we have a research archaeologist that is phenomenal, Dr. John DeBray. And John has a unique talent in that he can read these old 400 and 500-year-old manuscripts that were written in shorthand by basically a court reporter.
Wow.
And to see these documents, if you're Spanish, and this happens to be a Spanish document, you're only going to be able to pick out certain words that you can read. And it takes a true scientist to be able to actually read these documents. And he
Wow.
goes in and he reads these documents for us. And these archives are around the world. They're in, of course, Havana, but they're also in Seville, Spain. That's a huge one. They're in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. They're in various places all around Europe and well, Cuba. And we go to all those places. And that's part of the fun, you know, is going to these old, musty archives. And some of these buildings, well, almost all of these buildings almost, are these old 1500s buildings themselves. And they're stored back in there, and they have these things called legajos. And they're big bundles. And they take these bundles, and I'm getting a little off subject, but it's okay, I
No,
guess.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. We're all interested.
But they take these bundles, and they're handwritten pages, okay? And some court reporter is reporting, and somebody is saying something to the king, and they're talking to him, and they're saying, this is what happened. This farmer stole my pig, and I want my pig back. And the king's making some ruling, okay? However, you flip one page, and there may be something, hey, our ship went down in this storm, and it was not our fault. You know, the storm was really heavy. The waves came over the ship. You know, the ship went down. I was able to float on this barrel and be saved 3 days later. And, you know, this is what happened. This is where it happened. Okay, well, that information is what we're looking for. And we'll find that testimony, but the issue is this. These,
Did they ever find information about what the treasure was that sank?
yes, yes,
they
they'll have
report-
complete manifest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did they find the pig?
I don't know. Yeah, somebody had bacon that morning, but I don't know. Right? But right, but that's how these things are written, and there's no dates on them, there's no names on them, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these things.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So how do you know what's in the middle of these things, right? And you don't, and you have to have somebody sit down, unpackage these things, because they bring them in these beautiful packages wrapped up in silk and bows and stuff. But it'll be 900 to 1,000 individual handwritten pages where every page is something different. And it's just a miracle to find something. And
wow.
So that's
So wait,
part
the
of it.
process to do this is you got to hire somebody to come on in, read these pages. Well, they got to undo their silk boxes,
Yes.
pick them up, put them there, and they got to pick up the first page. And now, I can't imagine these things being in perfect condition, even though
No.
they're coming out of a silk box.
You're correct.
You know, blow it
Right.
off, look at, and now you like look for a word or two that you could recognize. Is that
No.
it?
Dr. Debray is able to read these
The whole
fluently.
straight through.
The whole thing. He can read their shorthand. He can read their little notes. Like there'll be a C with a dot over it, is what it would look like to me. He'll know that that's a particular captain of a particular ship on a particular year.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He's impressive at being able to do that. And I asked him, I said, how do you know that? And he goes, oh, because 14 years ago, I read another document that had the reference of the sea and who this captain was.
Wow.
And you remember that? Yes. It's like,
People have
wow.
that kind of memory.
Yes.
I am not one of them, though.
No, we know that.
We know that. Yeah. So, so a couple of the archaeologists that we have working with us are tremendous individuals. We've hired other archaeologists in the past to help us with particular projects that we were working on, et cetera. So we've hired several archaeologists over the years.
Now, do they train the divers that go down into the wrecks? And do they go down into the wrecks
They do.
themselves? They do.
They do. They sure do. And you said something actually very interesting, Michelle. The Dr. Debray actually teaches college-level courses to our divers in archaeology, because in this realm, if you will, of recovery, the archaeology is a very important part of it. And in the past, the archaeologists have fought with the treasure hunters. Typically, the treasure hunters come in, they grab the treasure,
Right.
they take it most of the time to the nearest pawn shop and sell it, okay? But if they find anything meaningful, they'll take it to an auction and sell it at an auction. And to get to that treasure, they may destroy everything in its path.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, not all of them will do that, but a lot of them in the past have done that. And because they have done that, the state has become very protective of its assets.
Sure.
And so the state wants to know that, hey, if you're going to be allowed to do this, you're going to do it the right way. And we do a tremendous amount of research, as I mentioned before, but they actually train our divers in archaeology. So they'll contextually know that, hey, this is how we handle these things. This is why we handle these things. This is why we use the equipment that we use and how we use that equipment. And I hope, I'm not sure, but you can tell me, Jerry, I think there's a film clip.
Yeah, there's.
And when we see that, depending on which one it is,
Yeah.
you might see some of the clear water come down, and that's from our equipment, because we're working typically in 30, 35, 40 feet of water. Up on the surface, it's clear, but as you get down, it gets murky.
Sure.
And sometimes on the bottom, you have zero visibility. And so we have equipment that will blow fresh water down that we can see with. And in one of the clips, you can actually see, here's murky water right here, and here's clear water right here.
Wow. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
run one of those clips, and you'll tell us
Yeah.
what this one is.
Okay. Well, let me put my glasses on so I can see what this clip is.
Okay. Wow, that was great. Now, what was that? We saw part what looked like a ship. Are we right? Or
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but the reason you were able to see that
Yeah.
is we have this equipment that's called a deflector.
Right.
It's also called a blower. It's called a mailbox. They use
So
different names.
it pushes the sand and all the dirt and everything away from
It will.
the boat. Right.
And it can be used that way. It can also be used almost surgically to bring clear water down. And in that little clip, you could see in the background, just as soon as you looked around the diver, the water was this murky green color. And you really couldn't see a foot in front of you. But you could see that wood clearly. And the reason you could see that wood clearly is because the blowers or deflectors were blowing a funnel of water down from the surface, 35 feet up, blowing it down so that you could see. But blowing it down so softly that it didn't disrupt the bottom.
Oh, I see.
So what was the diver doing at that moment?
He was exploring the wood from this particular wreck. And we're very fortunate to have wood because most of the time the wood gets eaten up by woodworms and it gets rotted and it floats away and deteriorates, etc. And so to find big pieces of wood from a 1700s vessel
Wow.
is unique in itself.
So do you bring it up?
We do not at this point in time. And that's another good question within itself. We leave this in what they call in situ. And what that means is we leave it in place, but at another point in time, we may want to come back and try to recreate this ship.
Mm-hmm.
But by currently leaving it there, it stays in status.
It's
Okay.
like a marker.
Well, as a marker for
Yeah.
sure. But ultimately, we can take that piece and say, okay, what part of the ship is this? Is this the upper deck, the lower deck, etc.? And that tells us more about the wreck because we know the treasure was stored inside the hull. So if we find the upper deck, we know we need to go down further to get to it. And so all those things help us.
Very cool. So I got here some toys you brought, and there we go. And here we go, Vic. What am I? Whoops. Here we go. Great. Okay, good. Oh, I got it. See, excellent. Now, what is this? It's very smooth here,
Yes.
and it seems like a piece of jade.
Uh-huh.
Is it jade?
It is. It's actually serpentine jade. It's a very poor quality of jade. As far as jade goes, there's a lot of jades that are worth more.
And where did that come from?
That actually came from our Juno Beach wreck.
Oh.
And we may have tonnage of that. And that particular rock came from Guatemala.
Guatemala.
So it says to us that our ship probably at one point in time traveled to Guatemala. They typically had river rock that they would bring from Seville, Spain, in the bottom of their ship to keep their ship upright. And they call them ballast stones.
Okay.
Now, they would replace the ballast stones, which are common river rock, okay, with things like serpentine jade or gold bars or silver bars.
Oh.
So they would pull out some of the weight and replace that weight with something more valuable. That was more valuable. They were going to make jewelry out of that. At some point in time, we will come back and pick that up, and we
We'll
may make jewelry out of it.
And what is
Yes.
this cute little ball here? Let me see. We got that there on TV.
Yeah, well, cute. As it sits in the palm of your hand, yes.
It's heavy.
If it was coming at you at about 1,200 feet per second, yeah.
Ow!
Right.
Ow!
Yeah, that's a heavy
Ow!
little piece of lead. that also came from our Juno Beach site, and that piece of lead is a musket ball.
A musket
And,
ball.
yeah, there's hundreds of musket balls.
So
down
they
there.
shoot that right through you.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. That hits you, you're going down. They can nick your arm. You're going down.
Really?
Yeah, that thing is so heavy.
So it goes right through you, like it punctures
oh sure,
you.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
And what do we got here?
Ah,
This looks like something
that
important.
that is what everybody's after, Jerry.
The host? No.
Yeah, yeah. The bloom. a
Notice my
a
wedding
silver
band.
piece of 8. Yeah, there you go.
Pieces of 8.
Yeah,
As
pieces
opposed
of
to
8.
piece of 9, maybe
Yes,
10.
right.
Depends on the deflation or inflation.
Yeah, 8 was their largest coin for the most part that I know of. That was their most common coin.
Oh, is that where it
And,
came from? Pieces of 8 was a large coin?
Yeah, and they would break it up into smaller pieces. Right, and that's how they would do it.
Now, what do I have here, sir?
That's a unique piece. That's a piece of lead sheeting. And lead sheeting is pretty neat within itself. You can see how pliable it is.
Yeah.
What they would do
I see there are
is,
nail holes.
that's a nail
in
hole.
there.
That's a square nail hole.
Right.
And because they had square nails back then. And what
Thus the square nail hole.
Yeah, right. That's the square nail hole. Right. What would happen?
Well, there you
is
go, Michelle.
These ships would sail for several months from Seville, Spain, down around Africa, over across to the New World, South America, Mexico, the Caribbean, all through there. They would eventually end up back in Havana, where they would load up with food, etc. But the problem is, as these ships would sail, these woodworms, I think they're called Torino worms, would eat their way through the hull. The ships would actually sink from these
Oh,
worms
sure, I can imagine.
eating through the hull while they're traveling. And so it was a big problem for them. So the way to fix that problem was they carried tar and they carried these little lead sheets. They were like Band-Aids. And what would happen is when the worm would eat through, they would lower themselves down outside the ship. They'd go down and they'd put some hot tar in the hole to seal the hole. And to keep the ocean water from washing it away, they would put this cloth over the thing with the lead sheeting on top of it. They would then nail the lead sheeting into the side of the ship so that the ocean water couldn't get to the tar and erode it away. And then that
So wait,
stopped
they're
the hole.
underwater nailing. It's got to be like this.
Thunk. Yeah. I'm not sure how they did it, Jerry. Yeah, I wasn't
Wait,
there.
is that right?
Yeah.
Very
But
slowly.
that'd be pretty tough to do, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe
If-
you could contact them and find out how they did that so we could figure out how to change our light bulb in our
Yeah.
pool.
Oh, yeah, there we go. If our archaeologist was here, either John or Jim, either one of them could tell us more about how they did that in great detail.
They didn't have like Black
But,
and Decker nail guns.
No,
Oh,
no.
I just want to double
No.
check that.
But I'll tell you what's interesting about the lead sheeting, besides what it was used for.
Yeah.
What happens is these ships would sink, okay? And these storms that sunk them sometimes would drag them along the bottom, okay? And as they drug them along the bottom, that lead sheeting is super soft, okay?
Wow.
And as that huge tonnage of a ship is dragging and scraping,
Scraping
it
it.
scrapes that lead
yeah, I
sheeting
can
off.
see. It's
You can
very-
see how it's all
yeah,
bent up,
so,
right?
so light.
Yeah, it was once a flat sheet, okay?
Yeah.
But it would scrape off. Okay, when it's scraped off, it leaves almost like a cookie crumb trail. So if you're going along and you find lead sheeting, and then you do a circle around it and find out which way the lead sheeting is going, you can follow those two directions until it gets to the wreck itself.
Wow.
So the lead sheeting is a really good little cookie crumb trail to help you get to your final destination, which is the wreck itself.
Now, do you just go to Florida or other places in the world?
Oh, no. I go all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah. We're trying to build inroads with various countries, and we already do a lot of work with Cuba. Cuba's a very difficult spot to work, as you can imagine, with the embargo.
Why do they just have like 1950s automobiles driving around Cuba like with Band-Aids and
Right.
ropes and things?
Right. For sure they're there, until the big car makers can get back in there again legally. Then you're just going to have to stay with the old cars until they lift the embargo.
And is there many treasures there, or?
Oh my gosh. All of these ships sell to Cuba, okay? Almost all of them, because they had to I won't say refuel, but they had to get food. They had to fix their sails. In Havana Harbor, for instance, they might be able to tip the ship so that they're no longer underwater to fix those holes, right? If they can tip it, pull it over, they can get to the side of it,
Sure.
and they can only tip it so far, of course.
Right.
But then they could repair those holes without being underwater, right? So they would go to Havana Harbor. They would repair these things, right? Okay, well, all these ships that came in and out of the harbor, well, as they're doing that, storms are hitting them. I mean, if you think about it, when you see these hurricanes come across the, Atlantic, how many of these hurricanes hit Cuba? I want to say all of them. They don't.
Sure.
They don't. But a lot of hurricanes hit Cuba. So there's certainly a lot of treasure down there.
Wow, so that's ready for the picking. And is it easy to work with them or what?
Yes and no.
Oh.
The yes part
Yes
is
and no.
that for instance, the head of archaeology, the head of conservation, several of the heads of different states down there are very easy to work with. They want to learn. They want to have research. They want research done. There's only 1 or 2 people on the island that can actually read these old 400- and 500-year-old documents. And those guys, in my personal opinion, can't read those documents nearly as well as Dr. DeBray. Wow. And he'll go down and he'll help them sort things out, and he'll say, this is what this means, and this is what this says, et cetera. And he works with them when he's down there. Those people are very, very easy to work with. They're helpful, they're nice, they're smart, bit underpaid, but other than that, they're wonderful, wonderful people.
And they got to work with the heads of the states or something? The heads of the government?
We work with the heads of everybody down there but the Castro brothers.
Look at that. The
Yeah,
Castro brothers.
I've not made it up to their level yet. I've got 1 notch below them, but I haven't quite got there yet, and I'm pretty sure I'll never get there.
Well, speaking of heads, there are 4 heads around here that we love to thank, and that would be Vicki Mealy, Tom Mealy, Janine Zarilli, and the iconic Tommy Marr. Why? Because they own Madhouse TV and the Mousetrap Cafe. And with that, stick around, folks. We have another show coming right up with Kyle, some more videos, probably play touchy-feely again. We could do that. And with that, we will see you in the next show. Stay tuned.
All right, Jerry, thank you.
Bye.
Watch Legal Straight Talk right here on Long Island Public Access, Channel 20.
Hi, I'm Jerry Parisi. Welcome to another edition of the Filmmaker Show.
Hi, Jerry.
I like when she says hello with a big smile. We got our great friend Kyle Kennedy back. As you remember, last year he was here, and if you're watching the show previous to this, we were talking about working with Cuba and the different wrecks that are off the coast of Cuba, and we'll have a video on that in just a moment, but we were talking about how easy it is or how hard it was to work with them. So maybe you could just elaborate on that when treasure hunting, by the way.
There you go, Jerry.
I'll throw that in there in case you didn't see last
yes.
show.
Yeah, because of the embargo that's in place, we can't legally work down there, so we don't. But what we do is we do research down there, because they kept records of all these wrecks, of manifest of everything that were on these wrecks. And they had the manifest in Havana. They would make copies of the manifest and put them on the various ships. So each ship had a manifest that would cover the other ships. So if one ship sunk, another ship could say, this is what was on that ship. Right.
Okay.
And then they would bring those manifests to Spain, to Seville, where they would, again, have copies. So a lot of the research we do is both in Havana and in Seville, but then they would get distributed to all these other places. Like there might be French ships, because the Spanish, to pick up this treasure, would sometimes employ French ships to help them do that.
Oh, okay. I get it.
And then the French would take them home, and you'd have them in places as far away as Dieppe, or in Paris at the Bibliothèque Nationale, or in various other locations. And so fortunately, I get to go to those places, and Dr. Debray reads these things to me, including the pig story I mentioned before. And he'll read these things to me and tell me what these documents are saying, and I can only listen to them. And about the only thing I've been able to do that's useful is, besides pay for it, is I can look at dates. And if we're looking for a particular date on something, I can recognize numbers and say, okay, this says 1722. Is it important? Is there a fleet that sunk that year? And if there is, then he'll look at it, glimpse at it, and be able to tell what it is.
Oh, wow. So he'll be able to say, and he more or less understand what might have been on that boat, and that sunk with it because the manifests were all on a different boat. Let's take a look at that Juno wreck and video you might all find interesting. Right back.
Okay.
That was pretty amazing. So that was the Juneau wreck?
Yes, yes. We've got a couple of sites that we're working on, Jerry. One of them is in Juneau, and I don't know if you noticed, but the water in that particular site was very clear. You can see a couple of 100 feet, okay?
Wow.
Yeah, and the guys, they can be down, they can look up, they can see sharks circling above them.
Oh, wow.
They've seen whales come by, all kinds of just really neat stuff.
I got to ask this question. So you're working down there, you're doing your thing, you're grabbing your stuff, you see these whales. Isn't that a little scary, whales and sharks above you?
You know, the guys that we have working for us, I think they're all alpha dogs, okay? These guys are tough guys, all right? And they don't seem to be afraid of anything, all right? We've had water spouts come up where you got tornadoes coming at us, and they just sit tight. They don't move, they don't blink, and these guys work sometimes at pretty good depths. And these guys do just insane things. They'll be digging these holes sometimes in 22, 23 feet of sand.
Wow.
So you've got these big giant bluffs on both sides of you, and they go down to the hard rock because that's what everything sinks down to. Okay.
Sure.
And so the sand is like liquid because there's so much water in it. It's like liquid. It's like liquid quicksand. Okay. So when the blowers are on or the deflectors are on, it pushes it out and holds it out. But if you turn them off so that the diver can swim down in there and go around it with the metal detector and visually inspect everything, then the banks or the sides of it cave in, all right? Like a river flowing downhill and just fills the hole back up, all right? That you just cleared
But if
out.
you're in there.
They are in there, Jerry, and they're in there, and here's how extreme these guys are, okay? They'll be in there, and the sand will be filling up over them. They can physically feel the pressure of the sand, but they can still move in it because it's so liquid, all right? And when the pressure gets to like a certain level, they'll say, okay, I'm fixing to be buried alive, so I'll push up out of here. And they push up out of there. And it's like, wow.
Well, let me ask you something.
These guys push the envelope sometimes.
Is the ocean floor all sand straight through, or is it actually rock at some point?
You know what? That's a very good question. You got coral reefs and things that are in various locations, but what's happening is the state of Florida does all this beach renourishment to keep our beaches where people want to come to them. And what happens is that beach washes out into the ocean, and it covers up these reefs and kills them. So a lot of the reefs get killed because of the beach renourishment plans. Now, those that don't get killed are live, and we avoid them and stay way away from them, you know, because those are habitats for fish and all kinds of things, right?
Okay.
And so you got some coral reefs, all right? But what happens is you got a lot of sand at the beach, and the further you get away from the beach, the shallower the sand gets. It's almost like a triangle.
Okay, I can see that.
You know, so
Sure.
you got hard rock all the way along,
Right.
right? And the sand will come out. So you may be a mile out, 2 miles out, and you have very little sand. You get way out, and you have no sand. So if ships sink in deep water, the ship just sinks in the deep water, sits there. There's no current to mess with it. The woodworms and stuff eat the wood away, and you get a big pile of rubble. So if you're in deep water, you have that, and you can just see it. You
So
can send cameras
not
down.
all shipwrecks are covered up in dirt and sand.
Right. But the ones I go after, or Seafarer goes after, are currently covered up in sand. Now, we eventually want to go after some that are a little bit deeper that aren't covered up. But that's part of our growth model for the future.
And what's deep? When you say deep, how deep? From the top of the ocean to where these ships can be lying down in the deep water?
Yeah, my divers can work down to a couple 100 feet, you know, pretty easy. But we got some special divers that, you know, have these military backgrounds and FBI backgrounds. These guys can go down 500 feet plus with rebreathers, and they're very sophisticated divers. And we can go down, you know, to those depths. We wouldn't try to do that, you know, by tanks. We would send robotics down. But once you get to that 500-foot mark and deeper, you're going to want to go with robotics. And right now, we don't have anything in that range. We are going to explore some wrecks. We've got 24 ships picked out right now that are between 400 feet and 800 feet. And we're going to have robotics take a look at it. And we're looking at some new drones that have just recently come out that can go down to those depths with cameras and lights and actually be able to visually inspect these wrecks. So if I go down and I look at one of them and it's got a bunch of cannon on it, that was probably a treasure ship, and I'm going to be going after it. You know?
Wow,
That
very
sounds
cool.
like an incredible project for a university,
It would be.
for kids to develop something like that.
Yeah.
You know
that
what?
would be like amazing.
Michelle, you said the right thing. We've tried a couple of different times, and we'll try again in the future, to work with some of the universities.
I know from the last time we spoke that you're very much into the education end of things all
Yes.
around,
Yeah.
which is why I thought of that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right on. And, you know, the difficulty we're facing is the universities tend to think of us as just treasure hunters, okay?
Got it.
And, you know, we do so much more. It's almost ridiculous, okay? But until we prove ourselves, you know, to the academic world through our actions,
Right.
they tend to shy away from us.
I would think that engineering programs that have robotics would be
That's one
right
thing.
up there.
There's one of the major universities in California, and I can't name them because it's not in the public domain yet, but one of them is working with one of the companies that want to work with us using their robotics to actually go down on our site. And they've developed a robot that swims underwater, almost looks like a person.
Wow.
It's wild. And we've got some things that are really state-of-the-art that will be coming our way that we're not currently using today. But I envision that we will be using some of these things in the future.
Awesome.
Wow.
And yeah, we've got
That's
some
awesome.
really neat things that are happening in the future.
Let's look at another video.
Okay.
You're all right here. Go, who's flying?
That was great. So what were we looking at under there?
Uh-huh. That was Juno Beach. I could tell, one, by the visibility in the water right
Okay.
off the bat. Second was that was grid work. We grid these out so that we can map and know where something was located. It
Oh.
looked like in this film those were ballast stones to the best
Right.
of what I was looking at.
Like-
Much like,
like-
that stone,
Okay,
right.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
this is the ballast stone.
Yeah,
I think if you want
Yeah.
to.
that's the serpentine jade
Can
is
you
what
see
these
that,
particular
Vicky, or-
stones were. And
Let me do it in my hand a second. Here you go.
there's quite a bit
There
of
you
that
go.
down there. And
Smooth
we
on one
we
side.
ultimately will
So
come
this-
back and pick that up when it is of more value. Right now, we don't know the name of the wreck in Juno Beach.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't know their name, you don't know what the manifest was. You
Right.
don't know what it carried.
Right.
You know, you got a lot of question marks. What we do know is it did have these stones on there, which were serpentine jade, which came from Guatemala. So we know that. We know that some of the nails are 4.5 feet long. All right.
Really?
Which tells
Wow.
us
4.5 feet, a nail?
yeah, you're talking about like that, right? Yeah, and they're about so big around, and they weigh almost as much as an Olympic barbell. They're really heavy,
And so what do you nail with that?
really big boards. Yeah, you can tell this wasn't a little rowboat. Okay, you can tell, and our guys have looked at these artifacts and estimated that the size of this ship was between 600 and 700 tons. Which is
Wow.
a massive, massive ship.
That's massive.
And for being in the 1500s, what's significant about that is in the 1500s, they were still killing all the Incas and Mayas and Aztecs and taking all their gold and silver and their real artifacts back home. And it wasn't until 1564 that the Pope said, hey, look, I feel really bad that you're bringing back the religious artifacts. Now, they are made out of solid gold, so I'll take them, okay? But I feel bad about it. So the Spanish go, no, okay, no problem, Pope, right? So in,
Yo, Pope.
1564, they turned around and started melting everything down in South America and making mints and turning everything into gold bars, silver coins, gold coins, etc. And so if you get a wreck that's before 1564, you stand a good chance to find real artifacts, from South America or Mexico, etc.
Now let me ask you a question. You had to get permits to get all of these. And
Yes.
what did the permits allow? Because you got a brand new permit. You're able to go out there now closer than a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
Right above the ship.
Right.
And you can do your digging or whatever
Yes.
you're doing. What's in it for the government or who issued the permits? I don't understand
There
how
you
that
go.
works.
There you go. Right. There's actually 3 phases to these permits. The first phase the government will give you, and this is the state of Florida. So when we talk about the government, it's not the federal government; it's state government.
State of Florida.
And the state will say, okay, you can go out and map this area with a cesium vapor magnetometer. And what that device will do is it'll find a piece of iron. It'll find a little bitty piece of iron 25 feet under the sand. It's extremely accurate, all right? And these ships were made out of wood and iron.
Right.
And this will find the iron. So when one of these ships come to rest, there's a big spread of iron. All the nails that were in these ships, all the pulleys, all the cleats, the stove, the barrel rings, all these things that are on this ship made of iron is all sitting in this area.
Right.
And when the mag survey goes over, it lights up like a Christmas tree. And you can sort of see underwater, under sand, where these wrecks have
Where
come to
they
rest.
are.
But it doesn't show you where the treasure is. It
And
shows
you said the
iron.
treasure. You say the treasure is usually where?
Well, in
Other
the
than
hull.
the obvious
They're
the
going to
hull.
put it down low near the bottom of the ship to help keep the ship upright. Because these sails were so big. Sometimes the
Okay.
sails were 100 feet high.
Right.
And if the wind blew and they didn't have that ballast in the bottom,
And
they would
was the
fall
hull
over.
was the hull made out of wood?
Yeah. The whole
So
ship
then
was
the
wood.
wood, as you were saying before, the wood would disintegrate. So it's possible
Yes.
that these treasure chests are just sitting on the bottom of the ocean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
covered under sand or whatever.
Right. And as we saw in an earlier video clip of our Melbourne beach site, some of the wood was preserved because it got down into a
Right.
silty type material that didn't allow oxygen to get down into it. The woodworms without oxygen can't live. So these particular pieces were protected, which is highly unusual. And we're very pleased. But that's our Melbourne beach site, not our Juneau site,
Right.
which is about 114 miles south of our Melbourne beach site. Yeah.
So which site are you focusing most of your energy on at this point?
The Melbourne beach site.
Okay.
The reason being is we have some reasons to believe that we may know the name of that ship. We may know what that ship carried, and it is very attractive to us. The ship that's in Juneau Beach, we couldn't absolutely tell you its nationality. We think it's Spanish, but it may not be. We don't have enough to know. We know it's a big ship.
Right.
We know it carried a lot, but we don't absolutely know. The one in Melbourne Beach, we think we have a pretty good idea on what this ship is. And we've found some very interesting pieces that have helped us identify it. And we've done tremendous research on it. There's a tremendous amount of history on it. And so that's our primary focus. And the new permit that we just got allows us to go and begin to work directly on top of that site area. And keep in mind, it's not just a ship buried under sand. It breaks apart, it
Right.
spreads around, and this area is about 1,600 feet across. And it's about 1,200 feet off the beach, so it's not very deep, 30, 35 feet, 40 feet at the deeper end. And, you know, you still have a lot of territory to cover. So even though I just got this permit this last week to do this,
Right.
it'll take me a while to cover that area. Over the
Sure.
next 2 months, we should learn a tremendous amount about that wreck area because we'll explore it. We've got different ships. We can put different crews at different locations, and we can work multiple areas simultaneously on the same day and hit different targets every day and learn about our wreck. We can say the ship fell this way and it all sloughed off this direction, or the
Correct.
ship fell this way and it all sloughed off that direction. We'll be able to learn these types of things, and we'll be able to document these things, and we'll be able to make research papers out of them and reports and say this is how this has happened, etc.
Do
So-
you
Now-
ever find? Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Is there always a representative from Florida at your site when you're diving?
You know, you would think so. And in reality,
you
there's
would
never
think.
been. And I've offered to pay to have them come down with us, but they can't let me pay them because that might be considered some kind of bribery or something.
Okay.
And the state doesn't have the money in their budget to send their archaeologists out on treasure hunts. And so there's no budget
So
for
you're
that.
under contract with them to give them a certain percentage?
Yes, we're under contract. They get 20% off the top.
Okay.
And they get to pick their like if we brought a bunch of treasure up, they'd get to pick their 20% off the top first. So if you got 100 of these gold coins and you got this beautiful gold cross with emeralds and diamonds and a perfect necklace, right? They're going to say, okay, you keep the coins, we'll take the necklace because this is one of a kind.
And because it draws more for people to come see it. What are they going to do with this stuff?
Well, that's the next problem. You know, they've so far
problem.
just put it in a vault, okay, and nobody gets to see it. Okay, that's sort of a useless point. The good thing is that they keep it as a collection, okay, and what I would like to propose and have proposed multiple times to the state of Florida is that we combine our treasure, although I don't have any yet, but I hope to soon, that we combine our treasure and do an expo. Because I've had all these different expo companies come to me and say, we'd like to do an expo worldwide, nationwide, et cetera. We'll pay you so much per city, et cetera, okay? And I could take part of that money and pay to the state. So we could combine their treasure with our treasure, not sell that treasure, and actually make money off that treasure for the state of Florida. So we've got good ideas and good things we'd like to work with them on
Right.
that so far they've not opted to do because, again, we're considered just simply a treasure hunter,
Treasure hunting.
all right? But we're totally different.
What is you're traded on the open market? Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And you have stocks that are behind these things.
Yes.
And now that you got this new permit, what's going to happen to the stocks? Is that going to make them go up?
Well, you know what, Jerry, you got a pretty good handle on this. You act like you almost own some of these shares. I'm going to say that you've probably acquired a few shares
Yeah,
since I
slightly.
last been on your show. Yes, I
Yes,
thought
I
so.
have. I have.
Yes, I thought so. But here's the thing. We've had, over this last week, about a 400% increase
Oh my
in
gosh.
the price of our stock. Yeah.
Awesome.
But I have to say, being an old broker, I was a broker for 33 years.
Right.
When a stock spikes up like that, you almost always get a sell-off. And the price will trade back down because it spikes. It goes too high too fast.
Oh, so the idea is to make it go up a little at a time. Is that the best way of doing it?
Well, that would be. But what happens is a natural evolution, all right? As we begin to perform, our stock will begin to move up. The first piece of performance is actually getting the permit that allows us to work the wreck itself. Not half a mile away,
Right.
but work the wreck itself.
The wreck.
That's the first piece of performance. Second piece is actually finding treasure, okay? And then the third piece would be if we were doing something to create revenues. Because if our company could create revenues, not through the sale of treasure, but could create revenues through other means, media, various other things,
Right.
then we could bring that money in and use that money to finance the company, which would be a better way of financing the company than selling stock to support the company.
Sure, that's
So-
understandable.
Because this has occurred, our stock right now is at record lows. And right now is one of the best times in the world to get our stock.
Sure.
Because we now have our first rec that we're about to now start working on, and our stock's at record lows. We've got huge potential in these recs. We have several of these recs, not just one of them.
Right.
So we're not a one-trick pony.
Got it.
So right now is an extremely good time to be a long-term investor in our company.
Awesome. And speaking
Yeah.
of performance, it's the end of this one already.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Filmmaker Show just pops by. You are an amazing guest, Kyle. Thank you for coming up from Florida. Come zip up and zip back. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we
Guys,
really
we're going to
appreciate it.
Mousetrap
That's good.
Cafe tonight. Anybody watching us here, you can meet Kyle, Michelle, and myself. Although Michelle doesn't like it when too many people meet me at once.
Get over yourself.
For Vicky Mealy, Tom Mealy, Janine Zarilli, and the iconic Tommy Marr, I, on behalf of the Filmmaker Show, thank you, Kyle, Michelle, and we will see you folks next week right here on MadhouseTV.com, the only internet station that is this big.